Menendez.
Thank you. The collapse of FTX last week is the latest in a series of high-profile crypto collapses this year, which have left investors locked out and facing uncertain prospects for recovering their money. This should be a renewed call for Congress to take a serious look at crypto exchanges and lending platforms, many which engage in risky behaviors while marketing themselves as safe for consumers. Mr. Gruenberg, am I correct in saying there are no cryptocurrency firms backed by the FDIC?
That's correct.
In fact, at this time, FDIC insurance does not cover cryptocurrency of any kind. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
Now, many of these firms are marketing themselves to consumers as safe and responsible while engaging in risky behaviors without the guardrails and safety nets that exist within the traditional financial system. In August, the FDIC issued letters demanding several crypto firms, including FTX, cease and desist from misleading consumers into believing their deposits were insured. The FDIC and Federal Reserve issued a similar letter in July to Voyager LLC, which collapsed earlier that month. What can we do to combat misinformation like this and better protect and inform consumers in the crypto space? Mr. Gruenberg?
Thank you, Senator. Listen, this has been a key priority for us. The strength of the FDIC is the public's confidence in our deposit insurance system. So if that confidence is put in question, it really puts the system at risk. And if we have financial players who are engaging in blatant misrepresentation in regard to deposit insurance coverage, that's not only a violation of the law by firms that do that, it really is a threat to the credibility of the FDIC and our deposit insurance system. So when we identified some companies in the crypto space and others, but engaging in misrepresentation, we acted very forcefully in sending letters demanding that they cease and desist, and indicating that if they did not comply, we have enforcement authorities available to us under the law that we can bring to bear. We thought it was important in regard to those individual actors, and we thought it was important to send a message to those who would think about engaging in misrepresentation of deposit insurance.
I'm glad you did, and I think these exchanges having these troubles should instigate us and regulators to look at what regulations are needed to ensure investors in the overall financial system are protected. I want to thank all of you for jointly proposing a rule to modernize the CRA to increase lending in minority communities. We saw 2 years ago an assault on the CRA when the OCC acted alone and proposed a rule that would have left minority communities with less credit. And I thank Comptroller Sue for withdrawing that rule. According to the Census Bureau, there are over 26 million limited English proficient consumers in the United States, with 17 million of those consumers speaking predominantly Spanish. So, Mr. Barr, Mr. Sue, Mr. Gruenberg, do you all agree that language can be a barrier to assessing financial services?
Yes. Yes.
Would you all agree that, for example, home mortgage loans and small business lending could increase in Hispanic communities if banks provided more documents and in-person services in Spanish?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So I hope you'll all consider seriously in your services test an evaluation of a bank's ability to serve those with limited English proficiency. In August, I joined Chairman Brown and 17 of our colleagues in a comment letter urging you to include this in your final rule, incentivizing banks to offer more services, and for example, Spanish, will increase banks' ability to diversify their staff, something the banks still often fail to do. With a $1.8 trillion domestic marketplace, this would make a lot of sense for the banks as well as for the community. And they take their deposits, they should be also willing to work with them. Finally, Vice Chair Barr, as you know, the Federal Reserve has again the opportunity to appoint a Hispanic to a Federal Reserve Bank president at either the Kansas City or Chicago Federal Reserve Bank. In its 108-year history, the Federal Reserve has never had a Hispanic Federal Reserve Bank president. During your confirmation process, you made a commitment to develop a transparent process with meaningful public input on the selection of Federal Reserve leadership. I suggested 6 ideas to strengthen the Reserve Bank director and president selection process. You agreed at that time with all of them. Can you tell me what specific actions have you taken to implement any of those reforms?
Thank you, Senator. First of all, let me just start by saying there's a lot more work that has to happen. I think it's good that you've pointed out this issue and continue to point it out to the Federal Reserve. There have been a number of positive steps that I've talked through with my colleagues at the board. There's been progress in recent searches on the public posting dissemination of position descriptions and webinars and town halls to get public input. The public is, in these recent searches, undertaken solicitation of nominations, ideas from the public for individuals. There's been, in recent searches, engagement with public service organizations, with civil rights groups, with community organizations. There has not yet been progress on one of the items that you suggested, that's a public release of demographic information. And we're also considering the suggestion that you made, but haven't taken action yet with respect to getting public input on the process itself at the board or bank level. So we've made some progress, but we're still seeing a lot more work to do.
Well, let me just close by saying anonymized data is something that shouldn't be so hard, but would give us a window into the process. And the proof, ultimately, will be in whether or not there is a selection of a qualified individual, for which I believe there are many candidates. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.